Today I'm going to show you how I combine references and put together a little painting like this on a paint can lid. For the Spacesuit reference, I'm going to use this photograph of Pavel Popovich. He was one of the original 20 cosmonauts, and he was the first Ukrainian in space. Once I've selected the reference for the spacesuit, I take one of my skulls and arrange it on the stage. In the photograph, it looks like the light is coming from the upper left, so I'm setting my model up on my stage with the lighting in the same direction. I want to try and have the skull oriented in the same position as the astronaut's face in the photograph. So now I have my reference photo on my computer and I've got my skull model set up with the correct lighting. I start to draw. I usually start by sketching in the helmet. I just want to get the big shapes down here. I'm not going for a completely detailed and absolutely accurate drawing of this. I just want the big shapes and forms in the helmet. I'm paying a lot of attention to the light and dark shapes, and I'm trying to get their relative sizes and positions as accurate as I can. I need this thing to read like a three-dimensional object. Once I get the helmet roughed in, I go ahead and start on my skull. I look at my model and I can use the cheekbones and the brows and the bridge of the nose and other major landmarks to orient the head inside of this helmet. As with the helmet, I'm essentially making a map of the light and dark shapes. I'm trying hard to not be too fussy with the little details. As I draw, I'm being very careful to really observe my skull model. I want to do a convincing rendition of a skull in this. I'm also continually looking back at my reference photo because I want to make sure the skull is fully integrated into that helmet. As I finish out the skull, I realize I forgot a couple of details in the helmet neck, so I go ahead and draw those in as well. Once I have my drawing done, I go ahead and spray the panel with some workable fixative. I use sprayable fixative at this point because if I brush anything on, it's going to disturb the graphite and smear it all over the place. This sprayable fixative dries pretty fast. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and mix up some colors while it dries. For my palette, I'm using cadmium red light, cadmium lemon yellow, cadmium yellow medium, and cobalt blue. I start by mixing a very dark violet with my cobalt blue and my cad red light, and then I add white to make a few different values. Toward the bottom, I add some more red and a little bit of yellow to warm up the mixture. Next, I use cobalt blue and cad yellow medium to make some green. These are going to be for the cool reflected lights in the shadowed areas on the skull. For the astronaut's cowl, I start with orange and add a little cobalt blue to it. Then I make some lighter values by adding white. For the lip parts of the skull itself, I'm going to use the more vibrant orange and just mix up some more values of that. Finally, I mix some chromatic black by making a very dark violet and then adding just a little bit of yellow to it to remove any vibrancy that might be in it. By the time I'm done mixing all my colors, my spray fixative has dried. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint some acrylic matte medium on here to even further protect my pencil drawing. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. The first is that I really want to seal my pencil drawing. I don't want the graphite to be lifted by the oil paint and mix with my colors. On a painting this small, where there's not a huge volume of paint, a little bit of graphite can really go a long way toward dulling your colors. The other reason why I'm brushing this on is that the matte medium provides a really nice surface to paint on. It's got just enough tooth to grab the paint, but it also seals up the gesso surface so it's not too absorbent. I don't feel like waiting around for this thing to dry, so I go ahead and use a blow dryer to expedite that process. Now it's just a matter of putting the right colors in the right places. I start with my darkest value and block in the shadows inside the helmet. Once I get that shaded rim of the helmet blocked in, I move down to the dark values on the astronaut's cowl. This is a small painting, but it has a lot of different elements in it. I'm keeping my eyes moving between the photograph of my helmet reference and the live model setup of my skull, trying to keep the values straight and the relationships sound. I'm working from a black and white photograph, and I'm not using any colored lights on my stage. So all of the color information that I'm putting into this little painting is pretty much made up. I'm keeping the colors for the helmet on the cool side. I figure it's in space, and that's pretty cold. I'm going to put some more temperature variation into the skull though. I want the lit areas to be on the warm side of things, and I want the shadowed areas and the reflected light to be on the cooler end of the spectrum. I'm using the cooler green tones for the shadowed side of the astronaut, and I'm going to use the more vibrant orange tones for the lit side. Once I get my astronaut completely painted, it's just a matter of blocking in the entire background with that dark chromatic black that I mixed up earlier. I like to wait until I get the background completely covered before I put any highlights or dark accents into my subject. The white of the gesso is awfully bright, and I don't want it to distract me from what I'm doing in the very final stages of the painting. I finished the small details and make some adjustments to my edges, and then I decide to call it a day.